MAGA wants strength and they want victory. They want success. And that's what we have. And we have been very, very successful. You know, when I went into Venezuela, I said, because I campaigned on the fact peace through strength, you wouldn't have to use. I built this great military. I said, you'll never have to use it. But sometimes you have to use it. And Cuba's next, by the way. But pretend I didn't say that, please. Pretend I didn't say that. Please, 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 media, please disregard that statement. Thank you very much. Cuba's next.
You heard US President Donald Trump. And what remained striking was Trump saying Cuba's next. It may sound casual, but it comes at a serious moment. Because right now, Cuba is going through a deep crisis. And the United States is once again at the center of it. So what is really happening and why is Cuba back in the headlines? To understand this, we need to go back in the past. The relationship between the United States and Cuba has never been simple. It goes back more than 100 years. In the late 1800s, the US stepped into Cuba's fight against Spanish rule. After Spain lost, Cuba became independent, but not fully free. The US kept strong control over its affairs and even built a naval base at Guantanamo Bay, which still exists today. Over time, American companies invested heavily in Cuba. They controlled large parts of its economy, especially sugar. Havana became a popular place for American tourists. But while money flowed in, many Cubans remained poor. That anger led to a turning point. In 1959, Fidel Castro led a revolution and removed the US-backed leader. Cuba then moved towards socialism and became close to the Soviet Union. This did not go down well with Washington. The US responded with sanctions and tried to remove Castro from power. One major attempt was the failed Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961. Tensions kept rising. And then came one of the most dangerous moments in history.
This government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba. Within the past week, unmistakable evidence has established the fact that a series of offensive missile sites is now in preparation on that imprisoned island. The purpose of these bases can be none other than to provide a nuclear strike capability against the Western Hemisphere.
This was the Cuban Missile Crisis. The world came very close to a nuclear war. In the end, the Soviet Union removed its missiles and the US promised not to invade Cuba. But the relationship never really recovered. For decades, Cuba remained under US sanctions. There were small improvements at times, especially during President Barack Obama's term, but they did not last. Under Donald Trump, pressure on Cuba increased again. And now, things are getting even more intense. Cuba today is facing a serious economic crisis. At the heart of it is fuel. The country depends heavily on imported oil to run electricity, transport, and daily life. For years, Venezuela was its main supplier. But that changed earlier this year. After the United States removed Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro, oil shipments to Cuba stopped. At the same time, Washington warned other countries not to send oil to Cuba. Some, like Mexico, pulled back to avoid US pressure. The result has been severe. There are long power cuts. Sometimes the entire grid collapses. Cities go dark for hours, even days. Fuel shortages have hit transport. Food supply is affected. Prices are rising and people are struggling. In some places, protests have broken out. People have taken to the streets, banging pots and pans in anger as they sit in darkness. This is the situation in which Trump says Cuba is on the verge of collapse. At the same time, there are reports that the US and Cuba are talking, possibly to avoid things from getting worse. But then came a surprising move. Even while putting pressure on Cuba, the United States allowed a Russian oil tanker to reach the island.
There's a report that the U.S. is going to let a Russian oil tanker go to Cuba. Is that true?
Well, we have a tanker out there. We don't mind having somebody get a boatload because they have to survive. It wouldn't bother me. If a country wants to send some oil into Cuba right now, I have no problem with it.
The tanker carried around 730,000 barrels of oil and reached Cuba's Matanzas port. So why block oil and then allow it? Trump explained his thinking.
Doesn't help him. He loses one boatload of oil. That's all it is. It's fine. If he wants to do that, and if other countries want to do it, it doesn't bother me much. It's not going to have an impact. Cuba's finished. They have a bad regime. They have very bad and corrupt leadership. And whether or not they get a boat of oil, it's not going to matter. I'd prefer letting it in, whether it's Russia or anybody else, because the people need heat and cooling and all of the other things that you need.
This gives us an important clue. The US strategy seems to be about pressure, but with limits. On one side, it is tightening the flow of fuel to increase pressure on the Cuban government. On the other, it is allowing some oil to reach the people, so the situation does not turn into a full humanitarian disaster. There is also a bigger geopolitical angle. By allowing a Russian tanker, the US avoids direct confrontation while still keeping overall control of the situation. So when Trump says Cuba is next, it may not mean immediate military action. It could mean something more calculated, a mix of economic pressure, political messaging, and strategic moves to push Cuba towards change. The larger goal seems clear. Washington wants to weaken the current leadership in Havana and possibly force a shift in power. But there is one big question. Will this approach work? Cuba has faced decades of pressure before. It has survived sanctions, isolation, and economic shocks. Today, the country is again under stress. Its economy is struggling, its people are facing daily hardships, and once again, global powers are playing a role in shaping its future. What happens next will depend not just on Cuba, but also on how far the United States is willing to go, and whether this long and difficult relationship is heading towards change or simply repeating history. That's all in this edition of Connecting the Dots. We'll see you in the next episode with more raging issues. Until then, it's a goodbye from all of us in the Delhi newsroom. This is Munun Paracharya signing off. Take care and stay safe.